My name is Jamie Bays. I'm the program director here at Rachel's Network. I'm zooming in from the ancestral lands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway people, currently known as Washington, D.C. I am pleased to welcome you all to the Rachel's Network Catalyzing Conversation, Black Maternal and Environmental Health with LaTricea Adams. Before I introduce our speakers today, I want to review some Zoom housekeeping tips. Please keep yourself on mute and use the chat box to ask questions or make technical inquiries during the moderated portion of our program. Speakers will be spotlighted during this presentation and should be most visible on your screen. If this isn't true for you, you can also select speaker view. Please feel invited to update your Zoom screen name with your pronouns as I have done and introduce yourself to the group in the chat. And just a reminder that this presentation is being recorded. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. We are excited to feature Young Gifted and Green's founder, LaTricea Adams, in today's webinar. LaTricea received the Rachel's Network Catalyst Award in 2025. The award is our signature program supporting and uplifting mid-career women of color in the environmental field. Funds for the Catalyst Award are provided directly by Rachel's Network funder members and other donors. The application review and selection process weaves together efforts by women across our sector, including environmental funders, Rachel's Network members, past awardees, and other women of color leaders in this field. I'm going to drop a link to the Catalyst Award in the chat. The application deadline has just closed for this year's cycle, and we're really getting excited to read and learn about this year's applicants for Catalyst. We're thrilled to learn more about LaTricia's work in today's conversation. LaTricea is the founder, CEO, and president of Young Gifted and Green, a national environmental justice and civil rights organization advocating for clean air and water, healthy housing, safe consumer products, and other factors related to Black maternal and children's health. Welcome, LaTricea. LaTricea will be interviewed today by Children's Environmental Health Network Executive Director, Nsedu Witherspoon. Among her many accolades, Nse is also a Rachel's Network Catalyst Award recipient. Children's Environmental Health Network is a national multidisciplinary organization whose mission is to protect the developing child from environmental health hazards and promote a healthier environment. Welcome, Nse. Before I pass it to you both, I'll just remind folks that the timing of this program was strategic, as tomorrow, April 2nd, is Black Maternal and Environmental Health Day, which was created by Young Gifted and Green to raise awareness about the importance of a healthy environment for Black maternal health. BMEH Day is observed on the first Thursday in April as a means to uplift Black women and childbirthing people's voices in the maternal and environmental health movement. Nse and LaTricea, I'm going to pass things to you.
Thank you so much, Jamie, Fern, our entire Rachel's Network family. Really good to see everyone. Really hope that you're all able to take a moment to just breathe. I know our days and our schedules are overscheduled, quite frankly. There's a lot happening in this world, and you chose to join us today. I think you're really going to get a lot out of this wonderful conversation. Whether you've met LaTricea before or not, I feel like you will know her. You'll feel like you know her a lot after this next hour or so. LaTricea, it's always an honor, my friend, my colleague. I've had the honor of helping Young Gifted and Green, of just being there to be a cheerleader in their latest milestone of their anniversary. And it seems like you've been around so much longer than you have, but that's the inner wisdom that you just bring. As an incredible leader of this fantastic movement and organization, we at CHN are always honored to partner with you. So this was a no-brainer. It's an honor. Welcome, welcome. So let's launch right in. For those on this webinar that may be new to your work and to you, could you please tell us about your career and advocacy trajectory and about the impetus for founding Young Gifted and Green?
Yeah, so first, thank you for the warm introduction. Very excited to be here, especially with Nse, who literally has been with us from day one. I always say, like, yeah, I grew up with Nse at this point. I grew up in the movement, where once upon a time, millennials were the youngest in the bunch. Now I guess I'm auntie now, which I'll accept that title. But my background is actually in K through 12 education. I spent 16 years as a K through 12 educator, 5 of those years in a classroom. 1 year, whew, that was intense, but as a school leader, but the majority actually in district administration, which that's really important because essentially I was able to work for the government, right? So that's very useful, I'll say, as it relates to what I went to with environmental justice. So, what got me connected to the environmental justice space actually was in the wake of the Flint water crisis. Now, mind you, I only have like one relative, distant relative, in Flint, Michigan. Had never been there before, but when I learned about the Flint water crisis, which was actually a year after the catastrophe, man-made catastrophe occurred, there was a lot going on in the country at that time. So this is around the time where you saw more heightened awareness with police brutality. You saw the rise of Black Lives Matter. You saw a lot of civil unrest during that particular moment in time. And so out of all of the various things that were happening, particularly to Black people, to the Black community, something just hit me in my gut when I learned about what was going on with Flint. And to be honest, I think like what stuck with me the most when I learned about it was the imagery. So I've dedicated my life and student loans to children and families, and the imagery of the children just really just broke my heart. But it not only broke my heart, it also made me really upset. And I always go to, and I don't know the quote verbatim, but I think about Malcolm X when he says, like, it's one thing, to be sad, but when you get mad, that's when you really start to move into action. And so, with the Flint water crisis, we started out, responding like a lot of people did in the beginning, with trying to get resources. And then we did like water donation drives. I think we were doing like Lysol wipes because that was one of the critical needs. And I knew that this didn't really get to the systemic issue around why Flint water crisis was happening. And so in January of 2016, hence we just turned 10, um, I met a young lady who I'd never met before. She had just graduated from the University of Michigan with a dual master's, yes, Black Girl Magic, a master's in public health and a master's in environmental science. Her name is Michelle Mapson, Howard grad. And so she came up to me at a National Urban League Young Professionals membership orientation. And she said, I love what you did, with the Flint water crisis, but you know that it's not just Flint that has lead issues. And to be honest, I was like, I know about a little about like lead paint and like lead paint chips, but more so like from my grandparents. But it kind of was like out of sight, out of mind. Y'all, later on that night, I went down a whole rabbit hole. I don't even know what time or if I went to bed. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a whole thing. But not even just like lead poisoning, but like water contamination, just like this whole like I opened up Pandora's box, right? Around environment. And so that literally was my entry point. And so I was able to couple several things. So, because a teacher is fully comprehensive, okay, especially like from not just from being in a classroom with teaching, but you work hand in hand like with families and children. So I was able to couple like those skills along with the political advocacy background and training that I received from the Urban League to really just go full speed ahead into environmental justice. I mean, I was literally building the plane and flying it at the same time. I remember we had our first EJ Summit like in the basement of the Greater Washington Urban League. Insay was there. Dr. Sakobi Wilson was there, and who introduced me to like, do you know about the Hermes principles and the 17 principles of EJ? Like literally just took that and ran with it. And just kept going full speed ahead because we saw a need. We saw a need, at that time, millennials were, the youngest adult generation. And unlike Gen Z, who is very much so engaged around environment, Millennials, not so much. So we were really creating a space for young people to be very much so connected to this work, but most importantly, ensuring that the voices of those people who were directly impacted were at the core of environmental policy work and programming.
Oh, thank you. I mean, all of this is so deep, right? And it's so unfortunately typical in that many nonprofits get their start, or the leaders get their start by, fires that we collectively see, and we're trying to put out the fights. And again, you're working full time. This was an
Mm-hmm.
add-on, and then there you were, right? You're thinking, oh, this maybe is a Flint problem. Oh, it's a US. Oh, it's a worldwide. Wait a minute, right? So I can appreciate and just digesting that. And every time I hear the origin story, I'm hearing news. So it's awesome to hear how Michelle also was a stimulus there. You mentioned the role that the Flint water crisis played in your origin story. To the extent you can, what's your sentiments about where Flint is today?
Yeah, so before I go into where Flint is today, I'm first gonna say Flint is not fixed. Like Flint ain't fixed. I want to start there. I know there's been like social media like posts that like, oh, all the service lines have been replaced. That's false. But for all intents and purposes of this conversation around the connection between Black maternal health and environmental health, literally came from my experience the first time I went to Flint. So the first time I went to Flint, I want to uplift, excuse me, another local organization called Flint Rising. And so at the time, so this is in 2016, Flint, Michigan was paying one of the highest water rates in the country for water that they couldn't even use. They literally were paying for poison. And so Flint Rising, shout out to a very phenomenal leader, Naira Sharif, was leading work around advocating for a moratorium. um that was like, I saw a lot of work again, like being in DC, you see a lot of work like on the Hill. I have been working on the Hill. But to see that much people power locally impacting state really resonated with me. But while we were in the community prep before we actually like went out to canvas, there was a Flint mother, and she had miscarried twins. And also she had like a school age child that was maybe around like first or second grade, and that child had already been suspended like over 20 times. I was devastated because remember, like I'm still an educator. I'm still on DC public schools like payroll, right? So my heart was broken. And honestly, I did not know like the implications around environmental hazards and the impacts that it had on reproductive health and maternal health. That was a huge learning experience for me, and literally like the impetus behind why we have this day to bring more awareness to that. And so when I think about what is happening with Flint now, even beyond just the Flint water crisis, there are already existing legacy pollution in the city of Flint. The nickname for Flint is Vehicle City. And so, unfortunately, with the automobile industry, they have been dumping illegally, into waterways. It also, has polluted the soil where there's significant brownfields and Superfund sites. Like, this is not just an isolated issue in the city of Flint. From a mental health perspective, people don't trust the water. That it doesn't matter like what they say, like, oh, the support came out. It doesn't matter. I want to uplift who's now my board chair, a Flint native, proud Flint native, and a mother, Ashley Strozier. And she actually did a talk last year around the commemoration of or acknowledgement of the Flint water crisis last April. And she said, no matter where I am now, I don't want to drink the water. That's devastating. And when you think about like water is life, and like, but you literally don't trust the water anyway, right? And I know that that's not just the feeling that she has, but a lot of people that were impacted. And even beyond that, when you talk about reproductive health, the implications around that level of lead exposure and lead poisoning is not isolated. It's over a lifetime. So you look at data from Flint from the beginning, the inception of the crisis to now, you see a birth rate decline. You see astronomical rates of preterm birth. Also miscarriages. This is a lifelong consequence, of lead exposure. So, Flint still is in a space of trauma in trying to heal, but they're still resilient and still powerful, still very much so. I think it was last month where in with the Detroit water system essentially went up with a rate hike on water, and you saw Flint front and center. They filled up that space to push back. I am so inspired by that city, a city where I didn't previously have connection, that literally changed my life, made me look at my own similar hometown down in the South in Memphis, just really changed the trajectory of my life and a new ministry, if you will, that God made for me.
No, I hear that so loud and clear. I remember vividly also having some interactions with pregnant women, maybe a year after, who knew that natural intuition that they had something was not right, but yet we're told the water's fine, the water's fine, and of course, with their the birth of their child, it was not fine, right? So definitely can personally relate. And then there's an anger, right? A very natural anger that develops among community and among the rest of us, because yet in this modern age, here we are, is this the best we can do? I would counter, we can do a lot better than this. So when we think about where funding streams tend to come traditionally, when we think about where workloads tend to come, we tend to still see these silos. They're better than before. There is an attempt, I think, for the collective to help share the narrative that actually we don't work in these silos. We don't live in these silos. We don't just live at home. We interact in many different built environments and the like in our broad environment. As your work certainly has intersected among many different issues and silos, could you help connect the dots for our audience between clean air, clean water, healthy housing, healthy schools, especially as an educator, safer consumer products, and maternal health, that we all know that actually they're one and the same? Could you help make those connections for us?
Yeah, so one of the things that I always like to lead with, and this actually is a quote that did not come from me, but it's so powerful. Her name is Kelly Davis, but the womb is everyone's first environment, no matter what. That's everybody's first home, right? And so for me, I think that it's really important to think about like the childbirthing person, to think about this holistically. And so when we talk about, issues that are prominent as it relates to reproductive health issues and maternal health issues, specifically with Black women, and that is not to exclude, other groups of people. We know that at large, regardless of race, the United States does a really bad job around protecting mothers, but with Black women are disproportionately impacted. And this is why these connections are so important. In addition to like discrimination against Black women in healthcare, specifically when trying to give birth, there are other external environmental factors that also impact the Black maternal health, or just the pregnancy experience. And even if you're not trying to conceive, right, just your reproductive health. So I always, feel very comfortable and vulnerable to share this because this is very personal to me. So when I was around 34 years old, even though I'm really 25, but when I was around 34 years old, I learned that I had fibroids and a ovarian cyst, which, at that time, especially like even at 34, creeping up, like, ooh, you're creeping up, the whole geriatric pregnancy, and then to add that on top of that. And I was devastated. Like, we know that Black women, are predisposed to having more fibroids, but that's not natural. And so what I was able to find out even about myself is, for example, when you live within a 5 mile radius of an oil refinery, my family is from Riverside in South Memphis. There's a Valero oil refinery literally in the middle of a residential community beside MLK Park. And to think that, a lot of times, like, people will attribute things to being like hereditary or based in behavior. No, literally, like, I can walk to this refinery. I see smokestacks. Not only do I see it, like, we're breathing that in. And to know that research shows that if you live within a 5 mile radius of a fossil fuel industry or petrochemical plant, it makes you predisposed to fibroids, to other endocrine related type of health issues. And I think that for us to kind of spread more awareness, we were like, we need to get in front of like the birth workers, not just OBGYNs, no slight to OBGYNs, but we're seeing more and more Black women in particular that are using midwives, that are using doulas, because that's how Black people that, were trafficked to this country through chattel slavery, that's who was delivering babies anyway. So it's kind of going back to connecting to the ancestral practices of birth work, but then also understanding that educating birth workers is the best way to relay this information. And so, I also think about, there's a wonderful movement that's happening right now that speaks to beauty justice and how various consumer products that are oftentimes targeting Black women, Latina women, tribal women, indigenous women have all of these horrible chemicals that, oftentimes are cancer causing, oftentimes create other endocrine and hormonal type of issues, can make you predisposed for, if you are pregnant, making you predisposed like to low birth weight, preterm birth, like a whole litany of these things. The fact that I didn't know that, right? I mean, ever since I was 18, I've been going to like a OB, to do my annual. This has got to be a standard practice with our health practitioners, with our public health researchers. We can't work in silos. Like, we can keep pointing to, data and stats and reports, but if it's not intersecting with the practitioners, it's kind of going on deaf ears, right? And so we've really been trying to spotlight and amplify that connection, even from a policy perspective. This is a quick win. I know I've been trying for almost 4 years in my home state in Tennessee to get a bill passed that would mandate for women that receive WIC, like women that's on care in the state of Tennessee, that they would get resources around lead poisoning prevention, around blood level testing. It passed in Tennessee. It passed the Senate, it passed the House. And so, that's important, where now we are not just educating legislators, but we're really putting this into policy, where we put the onus on, we pay these ridiculously high insurance premiums. At the bare minimum is for you to educate and provide access for me just to know. But we also, the next layer that is, we really need to push our institutions of higher education, our medical schools, to make this a mandate. I've met so many practitioners that were like, we didn't have any coursework, that really speaks to this. And the outcome of that is women suffering, disproportionately Black women suffering. So, we really try to focus on a holistic perspective where you're bringing in, yes, the researchers, the practitioners, the policy wonks, the educators, nutrition is in there as well, bringing everybody together, because as a teacher, we think about the whole child, right? And so in this work, we want to think about the whole person.
All so well said. And when you think about these interconnections, there's too many now to offer. But just looking at the water discussion around Flint, just this week, Yet another, I mean, almost weekly now, our science, worldwide, world-renowned, peer-reviewed science continues to validate what people's lived experiences are. And what is it telling us this week, among many? That plasticizers, surprise, surprise, are very much linked to preterm births and many other negative birth outcomes. So if you do the math, and if you're a family that has to, for example, pay for what should be a natural human right, in my humble opinion, and pay for something that is embottled in something that also is going to cause long-term harm. And that's just one of many exposures, right? Just picking on plastic water and beverages, the cycle just continues. And that's almost going beyond social economic realities, right? There are lots of middle to higher income families that also drink bottled water all the time, right? Yes. Or as they're about. So the way that you are moving, the way that you are educating, the way you are leveraging and calling out the reality that we are working in this ever-flowing world. That's how we live. And we must think about our strategies and policies, protective policies in that way. So really appreciate how you've articulated all of that. So I imagine by now our listeners are fired up, right? And we barely skimmed the surface, but I think we're all aware that there are a variety of ways that we are not being protected, right? Despite education, despite some more investment, despite basic poll after poll shows that the general public seems to understand that environmental contributions can have a negative and or positive impact. Majority. Climate change is happening, right? Majority of our public actually acknowledges this and that we are a big part of that. So for our listeners, LaTricea, when folks maybe think that all of this is way too big for themselves, and it's just where can my efforts really make a difference? Could you please offer, because we know that every single person can actually help very much in helping us get further down the journey of positive protection for a wide variety of communities, especially our most marginalized. So when you think about maybe at least one big thing people can do to advocate for themselves, to show up, to lend their voice, what might be one of those examples?
The biggest example, and this is because this is the activist in me speaking, is even at the local level, if there is like a particular development that could potentially be harmful, where it may be, heavy industrial, lots of like air pollution, risk of water pollution, literally talk about like the risk. So we're in an interesting space right now, in our country from political landscape. But one of the big focus areas is around fertility and having more babies. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, then you should be doing a lot more to protect the womb. You can't be, anti-abortion, but then like not care about the experience for getting life here and like once the child gets here, because there's implications around environmental exposure in the womb that actually can last a lifetime. So my recommendation is when you start to couple like resistance, and it doesn't have to be anything big, with fertility, with impacts around reproductive health, and people listen. People listen. Now, of course, they know when I come in here, they already know what they're going to get from me. But the more that we lift this up, the more that we will start to see a shift, where we will start to see more of the connecting of the dots, even like in your social experiences, because I see this amazing question that came in the chat box around Black women, being targeted around certain consumer products. So a lot of the consumer products I'll lift up is around hair. With beauty products, and literally like the hair, like braiding hair, that just came out where they have a lot of chemicals in braiding hair. And you've seen like people that online, I know I do on social media, where people are having these intense like breakouts and flare-ups with seborrheic dermatitis, like all of these things. Also, you think about hair relaxers, absolutely targeting Black women. Hair relaxers have things such as formaldehyde, for example. So even, inserting that, into everyday conversations, even if you with your homegirls, at brunch, like bringing those things up. Also, I wanted to uplift the environmental working group Woo! I love that site. It is such a phenomenal resource where you can literally type in different types of consumer products and it can tell you a lot around the risk for those products, um, around what's in it. Because with consumer products, we know how it goes. We don't know how to pronounce some of the stuff that's on the back of these bottles, but this resource gives you, a more layman explanation. But then also, I want to also loop in this question in the chat box with the targeting of Black women, Latina women, other people from economic distress communities, beauty supply stores. So beauty supply stores, and I'm not necessarily talking about like the Sally's Beauty. We know what type of beauty supply stores I'm talking about. A lot of those beauty products are imported, they're not regulated. Um, they have oftentimes have a ton of different like chemicals, even like with lashes, you got to be careful with that too, with like lipstick and eyeshadow. When you think about lead and heavy metals, for example, the reason why those types of products have lead is because lead makes things pop. That's why they used it in lead paint, but you still find these same types of heavy metals and other neurotoxins and chemicals in beauty products. And we know that beauty supply stores are heavily concentrated in majority Black and Latino communities, as well as like dollar stores or like Dollar Tree and Family Dollar. Like they also have like $1 lipsticks, right? We've seen it, where it's cute, the color is popping, but what's in it? What's in it? And you think about lipstick, this is by your mouth, right? You think about like eyeshadows, this is by your eyes. Like, it can very much so get inside of your body and, cause these health issues that you wouldn't have even made the connection. So bringing it up just in casual conversation, if you're the auntie, in your family, speaking to the younger women in your family, but from kind of a low-hanging fruit perspective as it relates to policy, if this thing's happening again in your community and you have an outlet to submit written comment, if you have an outlet, if you're real bold, and you want to actually go to a meeting and make comment, even if you work in the federal arena, we do this a lot. NSA does this a lot, where they champion children's health, also reproductive health and maternal health. You see that in every recommendation that they make at federal level, state level. So just really incorporating these connections so that the decision makers can make the connection, but then also in our lived experiences, that we're also educating our loved ones, our friends, our colleagues about these connections and preventative measures as well.
All very well said. And shout out to LaTricea for also monitoring the chat while also being interviewed. Again, you're so multifaceted. It's amazing. You keep it all together. And that note about the targeting, right? I mean, there's targeting of certain populations, but again, talking about these cycles of harms and generation of harm, who also can afford to shop at the discount beauty supply? Our youngest of our women in particular, right? The $1 lipsticks, the $2 lipsticks. And again, it may look good and you're trying to keep up and you're trying to stay within budget. And at the same time, maybe there hasn't been a conversation with your aunties or whatever about, look, just save up for that Burt's Bees or who, I'm not trying to throw out sponsors here, but I mean, there are some manufacturers who are trying in their business model to show that you can actually make profit, but also not do it on the backs of people, planet, environment. So, and it's not exactly like they're all on the cheaper side. So there's a supply and demand reality. But as more people have demanded organic in parts of the country, organic, depending on the timing and the season of fruits and vegetables, is a little decent, more decent than it was 10 years ago. It still is unaffordable for many people. So again, we've got a lot of work to do. I had one healthcare professional tell me one time, look, I'm just trying to get my patients to be able to afford fruits and vegetables and stop. Forget about organic or whatever, so, those are real, whether it's consumer products or what we're putting in our bodies. We still have some work to do there for sure. But thank you for calling out all those realities. So again, huge thank you to Young, Gifted, and Green, your leadership, your board, your advisors, all of it for getting to a decade of work, right? You mentioned that it was awesome and it continues to be awesome to celebrate that. And I know you're rolling up your sleeves even more, especially now, right? In the backdrop of the world we live in. So, what is your vision for the next part of the journey here for Young, Gifted, and Green in your work and where you feel the most hopeful?
Mm-hmm. So I think about is two things. We hear this, casually that like black don't crack. So like black women, we look young for a really long time, but we're weathering. We might look really, well put together, on the outside, but we're weathering. We're still dying early. One of my heroes, is now ancestor, is Fannie Lou Hamer, and I have to lift her up in this conversation, particularly as we talk about Black women, Black maternal health, where she, was impacted by the, a hysterectomy, against her will, But when I think about the vision of this work, I really want to build up, and I say this often, build up the next generation of leaders. Where I don't want to be, God willing, I don't want to be an elder and still feeling compelled that I have to carry the weight of the world on my back, right? I want to reach old age. But in order for me to do that, that means that I have to feel comfortable, to transition some of this work. Unfortunately, I want, what MLK said, he might not see the promised land. I know that I'm not in my lifetime, but I have to invest in our young people and our young women, to lead this work. I know a lot of times, especially with our babies with Gen Z and who are adults, by the way, and Gen Alpha, they get a bad rep and people talk, like, oh, they're not doing this. That's our fault. Who raised them, right? So if we want Gen Z, because I would say Gen Z to save the world, then we have to do the appropriate investment. I can say as a millennial, I didn't necessarily have a ton of mentors because people still think millennials are their 17-year-olds. So I want to, set a new precedence where we are building the capacity of young people to lead, but also trusting trusting that our young people can do this, because it would be no good if I leave here too soon because I'm overworked and I'm overburdened. And then also along with that, what I envision is for allyship to take a different role. When I talk about allyship, that means like sharing the workload. We know that far too often in spaces of activism and spaces where we're trying to reform, that your grassroots organizers, which are largely people of color, bear the brunt. So you bear the brunt of the work and the pollution. We have to shift that. So I'm grateful for spaces like I'm in right now, where people understand what allyship looks like. Not to create like this like kumbaya heal the world, but like we really do need each other. The history of Black people in this country was on the roots of coalition building. It was. You had, abolitionists, both Black and white, that got us to freedom that we're still trying to seek. So it is a combination of investing in our young people so that we can rest when it's time to rest, and then also like being comfortable to hold allies accountable when you can't carry it, as a Black woman. And this is me preaching to myself, like I want a soft life too. Like I want a soft life. I don't want to continue to be browbeaten, and really shifting the culture around balance so that when our young people assume these roles of leadership, that they understand that it is not the onus on them to carry everything, but this is a comprehensive issue that's going to require lots of different people, and it can't all fall on one particular group.
We're getting okays in the chat and thumbs up, and it's so true, right? I mean, we've all been younger. We are all hopefully around folks or family members and whatnot, and I'm sure we're all having very amplified hopefully discussions, because one of the also worst things that could happen is that young folks keep in the stress. And we all know that doesn't do well for us collectively as we get older, hopefully, or, we hear about it all the time, the otherwise healthy person that's gone at a very young age. I mean, and to your point, we are losing people left and right. It is extremely scary. The notion of resilience is something that is real. I mean, all of our cultures have an incredible amount of resilience, and we are being tested, I do believe, right now to be resilient. And at the same time, resilience comes with a bunch of other stuff. And you have to then wonder, how do we break that cycle of this expectation that, oh, the kids will be okay? Do you know how many times I've heard that in my field? Kids are resilient, they'll be okay. When they have no other choice, okay, I guess survival does require us to do so, but at what cost? What does that mean? We work so hard, and then what? You're not here past 50 or even younger? It is not worth that. So I appreciate you bringing in these very real, I'm sure what we can all relate to, realities that you can have passion and have fervor, and it doesn't mean that it also needs to take your soul at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with that said, you've given us some really great attributes of origin story, kind of where you see the vision. What are some other aspects you just want to bring up about Young, Gifted, and Green, or this, again, congratulations, Newer Day, Black Maternal and Environmental Health Day. Congratulations on lifting that off. So necessary and needed. And I know we look forward, I know many of us look forward to lifting up that day and that platform for all good purpose. But anything else you want to add before we get to other questions?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a different pivot from what we were discussing, but I feel comfortable in this space to share this. We, as we all know, are in very perilous times. I oftentimes, when I'm either looking at, my news feed or television, I am just sick to my stomach that some of the things that we're seeing that I never would have thought that I would see in my lifetime. But even in addition to that, people are being personally attacked for doing the work. And when we talk about resilience, it is also for remaining true to the authenticity of this work. And so, what I mean by that is, we know, for example, like using the term environmental justice or climate justice, climate change, has been, for lack of better words, bastardized. And so, I want to share a quick bit about something that happened with me last year. Um, so, Young Gifted and Green actually was awarded a EPA Community Change Grant. It was big. We did all of the things that we were supposed to do. We brought in like community organizations. We got community feedback, all the things. This is for our location in Memphis. We even got support from a water utility. That's a big deal. Now, environmental activists, we are, tussling often with utility providers. And, it was such a celebratory time. Like our mayor, was behind it. But then, with the transition to the new administration, I immediately was fearful, or I'm like, man, I don't think that we're going to be able to keep it. And that was one of the most challenging aspects in my experience with leadership, or so I thought. So, in February of 2025, during Black History Month, there was a story from a very conservative media outlet. To be honest, I didn't know anything about, that ran a story that essentially said that because I was a White House appointee, mind you, this was uncompensated. I literally worked for free for 4 years as the youngest Black woman appointed to President Biden's White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, or WEJAC for short. Essentially, they ran this story that was a full on attack on Black women. First, they started with Stacey Abrams, even though I was like, oh, you put me with the GOAT. Thank you. But pretty much saying that there was favoritism that was demonstrated with, Young Gifted and Green getting this grant. Also saying like she applied in her own name. Everything is in my name because this is my organization. All the tax for everything, right? And so Fox News picked up, this story and the imagery that they use. So if you know me, I really love fashion. I really love fashion. I try to be, put together. And so I remember like that photo. When that photo was taken, that was my first day back from bereavement leave because my dad had just died. So I had braids that day, which I have today. And I was taking my braids down like in the front. And so I had like a head wrap on because I was doing a press conference like with the American Lung Association. The insidiousness and the levels of evil that was with that. And then in addition to like an attack on black women, it was an attack on DEI as well. And so in this Fox News like clip, they said, does LaTricea have like a background in environmental science? Where I'm like, y'all really don't understand this work. She was just a teacher. She was a Spanish teacher, just a teacher, and said like she has a bachelor's in Spanish. I do. That's my first degree. I have 3 degrees. I do have a bachelor's in Spanish. I am bilingual. I did educate our children. Just a teacher. And so if you really know me, I'm a little bit fiery. And I really wanted to clap back, but I couldn't because I'm not going to match ignorant energy. So I brought on, shout out to Jasmine Phillips, a black PR firm, like, sis, come and help me through this. And so we didn't play into any of that. In fact, like a lot of people didn't even know. They didn't even know this happened because we didn't want them to. I didn't want community members that, trust us to be caught up in this foolery, if you will. I didn't want my family, to be exposed. So many people that I was thinking about, and I just took it. I got hate mail where people were saying, I hope that she gets lynched because my name is LaTricea and I speak Spanish. Then they were like, is she American? She needs to be deported. I mean, it was the most disgusting and vile things ever. And you know what our response was? We did a whole campaign that said, we're still standing on environmental justice business. And that's it. We just continue to do the work. I didn't respond to any of that, even being attacked like by like the administration, the EPA administrator, like putting like my name, the organization's names and memos. Now I did serve him with my attorney because we don't play those games. But that's all to say that we have to focus on the work and we can't water it down. We cannot water it down. Watering it down and folding allows them to win. I'm a woman of faith. I refuse to let the enemy win. If this is my God given ministry, I know that God has got my back. I know the community has my back, and I'm going to continue to work on this path regardless of whatever obstacles the enemy may put in front of me. But now is not the time to cower, to sanitize our language. No, we're not doing any of that. And I'm a living witness. I'm trying not to preach, but I'm a witness. And this is a testament of you still can do the work. Just focus on the work. Ignore all of the static and just focus on the work.
Let's review. Your father passes away, and I know how detrimental that still is, right? You still could have gone away for a while and just been in the much needed space you probably needed to be in, but yet you were yet doing the work, interviews and all that. One of the most vulnerable times potentially of your life, your entire being is now forecasted in such a negative light. And yet again, back to that resilience conversation, the expectation, I will just say you're embarking for me, Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go higher. And I know that is not easy. It is not easy. But the demonstration and you even allowing us, I know I've heard you testify in this way only a few times, because I think you're very smart to think about your audiences and in your rooms. So you all should feel very lucky you've heard that. But at the same time, it's such a display for the rest of us, right? Many of us get up, we're like, oh, this is a challenging day, and that kind of, how do we all collectively put our foot in front of the other? Not because we have to think about how to fight the opposition, it's always there, but probably putting ourselves first. Because knowing who you are, LaTricea, there's no way you're going to hold and fester. That's hatred, and that's all kinds of things that we don't even want to begin to understand the origin of. because it takes too much energy. You, right. I know, choose to put energy where it should be in the fights that, putting community in front line and the most vulnerable first. So just want to, I know that was not easy. I know it's still not easy. I know young, gifted, and green, it's not easy right now. And who knows what we have in the future, but to continue doing your work, we all applaud you for that. It's necessary, it's needed, and we know it's not easy. And my final official question before I think we go to the audience. So again, please do post your questions in the chat for LaTricea. You've got her for a couple more minutes. As you think about your award, congratulations, Rachel's Network Catalyst Award. It's awesome to have you in that family. If you could please share, how has that distinction helped you or assisted you in your work and or you? And can those on this webinar, how can this, we all support continuously your work and others like it that's happening in their own communities when folks are seeing many layers of challenges and inequity and environmental health challenges to maternal child health and beyond. Maybe just speaking about the impacts of the award and then moving forward, how can this kind of new community now for you help to assist?
Yeah, so first of all, it's an honor to be, even considered, let alone being an awardee with like some dope women. Because when I looked at all the other awardees, I'm like, well, my goodness, what a blessing this is. But what I want to lift up with the award, and I've received awards before, but this award was different, where there was so much focus on me, like me as a human, like not necessarily like me and the work that that you do, but like I don't think I've ever experienced that before. Because when I think about awards, I'm like the organization, everything like for the organization, because like that's my baby, right? But that happens with mothers, where it's like everything about my child, but what about me? And that just meant so much to me. To be honest, it like also pushed my thinking like as a leader, where I'm like, we're human and we're amazing human beings, not just for like what we give, but for who we are. And I really felt that in that moment. Like I think as a leader, I forget that I need support too, because I'm supporting like a team. It's a lot of pressure being a CEO. You gotta, besides like, fighting for a community, I had to pay for staff. I'm responsible for people's livelihood, for people's kids. So it just felt so special that it was an investment in me as a person, but then also ongoing. This is so unique, where it's like, oh, we still are connected. Oftentimes, like you'll get an award, they'll take a picture of you and like put it in, a blog or an article, and you'll never hear from those people again, right? But this experience just really just made me feel supported as a leader, like in my own right, and not for the purposes of like producing something, but just investment in me. It is not like transactional. It's just like, nope, we're pouring into you. And that I really wish, that could be replicated, in other arenas. But it, has truly been a blessing. And also with the network itself, just really seeing some of the amazing, powerful work that's happening, particularly with leaders, women of color in the environmental space. It is very much so white and male dominated. You might see like a little bit more diversity, like with staff, but like C-suite, executive level, you don't really see a lot of women, period, but especially women of color. And that matters. That really matters, like the level of specificity and nuance with being in a network with people who get it. People who get it, you don't have to, try to explain, like why this was like a microcosm, like a microaggression, rather, like you don't have to do that. So the level of comfort in this network is also really refreshing, where you're with people that get it. You're with people who are aligned, mission aligned, spiritually, like really devoted to this work. So I'm really excited and so grateful, to be a part of this network. Now, the award, now that was nice. That was nice. That was absolutely the cherry on top. Never got anything like that before. But just the level of support to me as a person just has been amazing.
No, this network is real. And guess what? It's only the beginning. I'm still learning. It's amazing. It is truly, you can't quantify what it's like to be around energy like that. We all need and deserve energy like that for each day, but what we've got coming in the future. So I see some questions coming in. I really appreciate you taking the time to share so much with us. Susan is asking if you could please share how you're funded, by whom, if you feel comfortable, which organizations, as you see it, see your vision, see Young Gifted and Green's vision and needs, and what might be the most pressing needs for you right now. And you're just awesome and inspiring.
Thank you. So funding is tough. It's a hodgepodge of funding. So we are largely funded through pass-through funds, like so from like the big greens, and they do sub grants. So I'm transparent. So a lot of the funding goes to like our programming, which I didn't get into that a lot, but we have youth development programming. In fact, I saw one of our team members that's based in Flint that actually runs one of our youth programs. But a lot of like the political advocacy and organizing work, we don't really get a lot of funding for that, or if at all. It's much more attractive, for programs, but not a lot of capacity building. So literally, it's like how we stay afloat. We have a lot of small grants that just kind of add up so that we can, literally keep our head above water. It may seem like we have a lot of funding. We do not. Anybody can pull up our 990 and see what the truth is. But I would say, yeah, a lot of our funding is like pass through funding. We do have some funding from smaller foundations, which are amazing. We did have some capacity funding like about 5 years ago. But for us to be like at the scale of work that we do, like it amazes me like how little like how little, we have. But yeah, that's pretty much our funding model. We don't, unfortunately have a lot of foundation or philanthropic support. Now, because we also like partner with government agencies for some of the work that we do, there are small grants that we get like from the local level, but that may be like 20,000, 25,000. Like I can't hire, a person with that. So we have to consistently like, you know, pull things together, and make it work. Kind of like, how a mom would like pick and choose what she got to make a good meal. That's kind of how we've been able to operate.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it is a plus for sure when others are somehow thinking that our budgets are much bigger than they are. It's just showing your impact is pretty intense and wide felt. Okay, from Jamie. Jamie wanted to ask you to talk about the young portion of your name.
Yeah.
Why did you choose this as part of the organization's name? And could you talk about programs that you do to help young people see and get involved in this work? Very important question.
Thank you for that question. Yay. So one, once upon a time I was the young adult, in the room. But we have three programs now. So we have the Youth EJ Council. So with the Youth EJ Council, we piloted that program in Flint, Michigan, and it's now expanded to my hometown in Memphis. And these are some powerful young people. So we teach them about how to make public comment. We go through like the policy development, process, which is amazing. They establish their own policy agenda. That's on them. They present their agenda every year to members of Congress. We actually take them to the Congressional Black Caucus, ALC, every year, and they do a Hill visit. They also are engaged like with rulemaking as well. That's a big one. So, as you can imagine, because we have middle school, high school, and college age kids, we literally teach kids like on how to submit comment in the federal registry, how to do public testimony for EPA. So one of my favorite examples is when the lead and copper rule had the one last chance to put in public comment. It was very important to me to have Flint babies, Flint children, more than anybody, have a voice in that rulemaking. And I think we got like over like 200 young people to provide comment on that. Of course, we have people that are able to, because clearly the lead and copper rule is what, over 800 pages. So we also have people who are also educators that are able to break it down in a way that's accessible for youth. We also, and this is praise God, a grant that we still were able to keep with the Thriving Communities grant. We launched something called a youth energy assessment training, where essentially it kind of builds a pipeline for youth that may be interested in a future career in weatherization and energy efficiency. So we adopted the Department of Energy's do-it-yourself model, where our young people go to homes, they do a top to bottom assessment to essentially like help residents to not have wasteful energy. So like looking at insulation, looking at window sills, and really also like with the energy affordability issue, helping people to lower their electricity bills. And then we also do a summer camp every year in Flint, Michigan. I think this is year 5 or 6. It's an EJ camp. It's at Mott Community College, so they get to go on a college campus. We pay them, we give them stipends. We bring in all sorts of environmental career folks, typically people of color. So, like environmental scientists, engineers, researchers. Part of their work is to do research. We partner with another organization that's local called the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, where they bring in skill building around research. They literally submit abstracts, y'all, every year. Every year, our kids get their abstract accepted at the American Public Health Association. Every year. So they help to build the capacity there. And then we bring in like the integration of environmental justice, but then also environmental science and how that connects to like the career pathway. But anyway, we do quite a bit with our young people. That's actually like the source of my joy, is what we're able to provide to young people. We also have a mantra of tribe for life. So even after they complete our program, and they're still our babies forever. So no, we have one Flintstone, young man from Flint. He's graduating from Morehouse this year. He just got back from Tokyo, where he was able to study abroad, and part of that was to like do an assessment of sustainability practice in Tokyo and be able to compare that to what exists back at home. So, it's a wonderful experience with our youth. I can go on and on about that, but I know we got other questions, but we have a pretty robust youth leadership development programmatic framework.
Yeah, I can attest to that. It's amazing and so necessary. And again, hitting at so many different levels of mentoring and byway engagement, which then actually leads to some fruits of action, which is what we're all looking for. In our last 5 minutes, I'm going to try to squeeze in the last two questions here. So we have one question about, is there space for Africans in your network?
Yes. Yes.
Of course. Wonderful. So yes, please. It sounds like this is a participant that already tries to connect and attend virtual events. So please keep doing that. And I'm sure the team would love to talk with you offline if there are other ideas of synergy and alignment. And then Aminata, I'm sorry. Please, if I'm killing your name, I apologize. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Or you can put it in a chat box.
Oh, or the chat, yes. Or maybe the question's already been answered.
Yeah, what I do want to mention also is oh yeah, we couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I
Yeah,
know
maybe just type your question real quick. You
yeah,
can.
so to go back to first of all, I'm African too. I'm a displaced African. But I know we are trying to, and I really wish we had some funding. We really want to create like more global exchanges, like what happened for our Morehouse student, where they're able to have a more global perspective around EJ and connect it back home. I know I had an opportunity to go to Cape Verde and my mind was blown where there's so much integration of clean renewable sources. You saw like wind turbines like all over the place. I'm like, what? Like, why are we not able, to get it together, in the United States? So there's a lot of work that happens internationally, but particularly like on the continent of Africa that I really would like for our young people to see. But international, programming, it's pretty expensive, but that, is like our long-term um thinking. Okay, let me go.
This is like the big one. Why can't we get it together, LaTricea, in the United States?
Okay, let's see.
And just a lot of
Oh,
kudos to you
yay.
for your authentic,
Oh,
a lot
yes,
of
thank you.
transparency. Thank yous. Yes.
If
Yes.
you are a researcher or even if you just do like blogging that matters. Like I know like op-eds, like those are really powerful to keep it going. I know like on the ground, we use those resources when we're advocating. You know, if it's against like a harmful like development, we use those resources so it won't be like we're just making it up. So if you're a writer, even if you're not like a technical writer, I know I've seen some really powerful op-eds um, through like Black and Latino media that really helps, from an advocacy perspective.
Really, really appreciate that. We cannot thank you enough. Transparency, of course, bringing it, storytelling, witnessing, and really sharing a lot in just an hour. Just 1 hour. There's many more that could come of, where you've been, some of the struggles and challenges you've been through, but more importantly, how you have overcome and are still working. We're all works in progress, right? But it is a true beauty and honor to know that we're doing it together. If it has to be done, let's at least do it in community. So much, much value and thank you to you for joining us today. And now I'd like to move to Fern.
Thank you. And say thank you, LaTricea. Thank you, everyone who is here joining this call. I'm Fern Shepherd, president of Rachel's Network. And this is why we have the Catalyst Award right here in front of you. Two Catalyst Award winners who are not only doing the work in their communities and for children, environmental health, and for women, but for all of us. And so these are the leaders that we need desperately, and we all need to be supporting them. So let me ask the last question to both of you because you're both doing the work. And that is in our community, taking care for women environmental leaders is really an important value. And so we'd love to hear, even just shortly, the things that you do to take care of yourself.
You want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, so I am a fan of spas. I really like spas. I try to get a facial and a massage at least once a month. Even if like I travel a
Good.
lot, I Google. I'm like, where? Like when I said I was in Grand Rapids, I found a spa in Grand Rapids. So I'm really into that. And then also, I don't have any siblings, so I'm the only child. And so, like right now, I mentioned that I'm at my mom's house. I also like try to spend as much time with my mom. So, like, I'll stay the night often with her because when I didn't live in Memphis, when I would come into town, I would stay with her. But I live in Memphis again now. And I'm like, oh, I miss, that time. So I always create very uninterrupted spaces just for me and my mom. And that always restores me.
That's wonderful
Yes, yes,
insight.
yes. Plus one to all that. I learned probably too late in life, but I'm glad I learned it that, we got to protect the time. Just like we were protected for the grants for writing and the conversations we're having, we got to protect the time for ourselves. It will never happen. So getting out there for the bike ride that I love. We got a little puppy, so it's a good excuse. Well, he's not a puppy anymore, he's 4. Anyway, getting out there and walking, the dog and making sure I just get some breathing time. I used to also take a lot of meetings. I try not to do that as much because it defeats the purpose, but even walk-in talks, if it is a meeting that we can take, we don't have to be at the computer all the time, and just talking and engaging, I really thrive off of that energy. I think differently. I think creatively, right? When we carve out these spaces, but you got to carve out the time for ourselves, because it is this weird, it's never a 50-50. We need that family, whatever our notion of family is. We need our community. We learned this during COVID, during some of the hardest times of our modern history. Even if you're an introvert, you need to be around people once in a while that aren't on a screen. And we very much need our environment, right? We need our environment, our trees, they're all, for me to get up and hear the birds in the morning just really sets my whole, spring is here, but they're okay for now. And they're trying to tell us there's hope. I'm listening. I'm trying to listen to our ancestors, all the things, meditation, monthly massages, but really also traveling and doing what I'm doing right now, just finding ways to get away. I'm a better person for it. And I hope that I also think better for this movement in this sets of work that we're doing.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you, for sharing this. And listen, if you're here for this webinar, I hope you'll help us uplift these women leaders. And if you're able, fund them. We've put in the chat links to both of the organizations that LaTricea runs, Young, Gifted, and Green, that Nse runs, Children's Environmental Health Network. If you want to give anonymously, there's a link in the chat to how you can do that through our organization, and we will pass the funds directly to them. These are leaders who deserve our support, and we are so proud that we can spend time with you and to do what we can to uplift your work as well. And we will continue to do that. As Nse said, this is a community that is here for you. LaTricea, you're just beginning to see it. We aren't going anywhere. Thank you all for joining us today. It's goodbye for now, but we look forward to seeing you again in the next webinar, and stay in touch. Thank you all.